Hello and welcome to In Talks With, I'm Danielle Radoichin. In this episode, my friend, the journalist and creative director Simon Chilvers, interviews the British fashion designer Stephen Stokey Daley. Stephen is the designer of the brand SS Daley, which makes clothes for men and women that appear whimsically English and tailored, while at the same time playfully subverting traditional notions around public schools and queerness, as well as drawing inspiration from artistic pursuits and literary geniuses. Stephen grew up in Liverpool and studied at the University of Westminster, after which he did internships at Tom Ford and Alexander McQueen. He set up SS Daley in 2020, and in 2022, it won the prestigious LVMH prize. In addition, Anna Wintour has given him her approval, Sir Ian McKellen has walked in his show, and Harry Styles has worn his clothes. This summer, Simon visited Stephen at his studio in East London to talk to him about the challenges and rewards of being one of fashion's brightest emerging talents.
Hi, so we are with Stephen from SS Daley, and we are in his fabulous studio in Hoxton in East London. And Stephen, before we start talking about your recently launched Spring/Summer 24 collection,
Sure.
Let's just start from your perspective of like, how would you describe the brand to someone who had no idea about the brand?
My sort of initial mission was to take the idea of like British heritage, which feels quite stale and stuffy and with maybe some negative connotations, and interpret that for a modern audience that potentially isn't associated with the particular class range of which heritage generally is.
So you mean like posh?
Yeah, I mean like
heritage.
posh.
Heritage is like posh.
Yeah. And it kind of feels like stuffy old man in an armchair.
Yeah.
With like some sort of animal head behind him. You know,
Yeah.
And it's kind of not that. And that line of inquisition started because I was at the University of Westminster, which ironically is not in Westminster, but is actually all the way out in Harrow. And the windows of the studio overlook the Harrow sort of like school. And I walked like through the school every day to get to uni, and sort of discovered the world that I had never really, taken interest in before. But it's such a completely different universe. Sort of boys in twos lined up with straw hats in one hand and like super dishevelled old books in the other. It's kind of like a Harry Potter, film thing.
Yeah.
And then I sort of made my way through, those like vintage references of like public school culture, like Brideshead, Morris, Another Country, which I'd seen before but like never really put two and two together. That's this, and that still happens now, and then just started getting super into the political undertones of these schools. Kind of directly feed like the majority of our governing body, etc. And
And queerness as well.
Queerness, because the queerness aspect I think comes because if I directly compare my experience of school with theirs, there's sort of things that they're celebrated for in an all boys school in a masculine sort of way, were the very things that sort of separated me in a way that I felt like, oh, that's quite, that's queer, that's gay, what are you doing? Like the respect for the arts, even on an aesthetic level. If you look at like the Henley, boat races, the huge floral hats and things, it's like, just from, I'm not from like inner Liverpool, but like the sort of, if I was to walk around with like a flower hat sort of thing, even for a school thing, it'd be like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're not in like a tracksuit and 110s, then you are gay and get off the bus sort of thing anyway.
Yeah, so this kind of like weird sort of extreme of like posh public school versus the realities of that mixed with those kinds of iconic Brideshead type.
Yes. And then it was all about this like this moment of we had Charlie Porter come and visit during our final collection, and I sort of really clicked with Charlie, and he immediately sort of understood like this line of inquisition that wasn't necessarily villainizing that aesthetic. I think that's something that I've kind of now come into, is sometimes people are like, why are you celebrating this like typically Tory culture if you're, you know, so not that? And it's kind of like, well, I'm not celebrating it, it's kind of more just appropriating it for my own
well, picking it
interest.
apart,
yeah, exactly.
and looking at it and studying it and finding the queer references in it,
right. And you know, there's aspects of beauty within it, and there's a real sort of like fantasy element of that world. You kind of, you know, candidly, you kind of look at that and think, oh God, I wish I went to school on this gorgeous hill, this beautiful castle, and this incredible library, you know. And so yeah, it's kind of it's never really it's not really about like celebrating the negative connotations of those, you know, establishments, or, you know, it's not really about that. It's kind of a bit more removed from that. Yeah,
giving it a new spin.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's how the brand, that's how I started in 2020 on my BA. And then it's sort of from that moment sort of grown and evolved into its own thing, where it's kind of less about that one particular reference point, and now it's, I think, we've sort of built this tiny little universe in which the clothes exist and the boys exist and the shows exist and the brand, you know, lives. And now it's kind of just like we're filtering through those different ideas, kind of like a spider web of what these things are attached to, and ideas of like, you know, different class cultures and, you know, the sort of past life of different British aesthetics.
And for the new collection for Spring Summer 24, which
Yeah.
which you kind of launched in Paris
Mm-hmm.
in June, and it's called Merriment,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll come to in a minute. But I love the idea that at the core of this is the idea of the life of an artist. And I was sort of wondering, when you were thinking about this, was some of this because you have grown in your own artistic confidence in this collection?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but I never really consider myself an artist in a funny way. I think sometimes fashion designers don't. I don't really call myself an artist, or find it difficult to call myself a creative in a way. I don't know why, because it's such a unique practice, I think, fashion, in which that your output is not solely for admiration or for, you know, to be viewed. It's kind of not solely for that purpose. And so when you're removed from that, in which it is solely that for that purpose in like a, you know, an art school environment, I feel less inclined to be to label myself as that. I don't know why.
I think that's a really interesting debate that's never ending, and
I
it's
know.
been going on for like years, like art versus fashion, and, you know, is fashion art and all of that. And we've talked about that before, and I think it will be a dialogue that keeps going
Forever.
because they speak to one another. But like, why did you choose to think about at this point in time,
Right.
like the life of an artist in this particular collection?
Yeah, I think I recently went to the Freud exhibition, and admittedly had never really investigated Freud as an artist that I, you know, was interested in prior to that, and I just kind of found that I grabbed this and like
The book.
the book, and sort of read through it and found his journey really interesting, actually, even to like where he starts and where he ends up, and these like sort of gorgeous scenic like paintings like scattered throughout.
And when you say scenic, you mean the ones of like nature and plants?
Yeah, you know, it's just kind of, what I'd known of Freud was never this. And
Yeah, so like a picture of daffodils, or
yeah, exactly. And then I started to like I always sort of look at the artists like quite separate from their work, and I just kind of fall in love with seeing people in their environments, you know. There's a really beautiful image of him sort of stood in this like really, really British sort of knit with these like two little flags, and it kind of gave me like that regatta rowing vibe, and in a funny way, it kind of just felt like aesthetically, maybe superficially, it just belonged in this world.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's sort of like when I look at the people who have inspired the the artistic output of what we've done so far, like Vita Sackville West, Cecil Beaton, Virginia Woolf, they're all like creators in their own different, rights and ways, and it's never generally about their work, it's more about them and the way in which they are captured, which I think is so interesting, because they obviously, except for Cecil, the others aren't really the point of focus in their own world. It's kind of like me when I'm asked to someone to take a picture of me, I always shrivel into the corner and would rather actually we just focus on the stuff that we're doing. But I kind of find that really interesting. That's why Hockney's always on the board. I'm the hugest Hockney fan. I know you are. I know.
But why do you like him?
I like him for his image, I think, and his choices, and sort of when you look at an image of him, those choices that he's made of his own presentation, I find really interesting. Sort of like the odd socks in a few images and the little knitted ties, and I just find that he's his expression through his own choices of clothing are really interesting.
I think both Freud and Hockney's appeal from a kind of stylistic perspective are also to do with the fact that they had a look, or they have a look, in David Hockney's case, and it is a look which evolves with them as they age, but it doesn't really change, and it's like this kind of brilliant artistic uniform that isn't in any way a uniform to most people's idea of what a uniform is, and it's kind of, there's a kind of interesting idea about that, because obviously even though they look amazing, they are also ready to paint work. They don't want to be distracted by that, and it's quite funny with Hockney, particularly when he's kind of has a sort of dandyish vibe and
totally, but in a super soft sort of Sebastian Flight, Bridesheady way,
totally.
And I'm kind of obsessed with that, and it's so true about the uniform thing, because we started looking at the uniforms of public schools, and it's kind of moved into the uniforms of which artists choose to wear, because obviously it's not a prescribed notion. It's interesting.
And with you were talking about the outfit with Freud and the flags on the sweater.
Yeah.
Are there any favourite David Hockney looks?
Yeah, there's kind of the one of him in the car with the green suit on, and the little knitted tie. I think that's brilliant. Yeah. And it's been on my board for every season. Yeah. I adore that. He just is. He sort of kind of is that foppish brideshead boy in a funny way, and I kind of also find that he doesn't always reflect his artwork in a way. He does on a very surface level, but it kind of feels different. Which I kind of find is mostly the case,
Well, he's also I think he's also kind of incredibly British in his mindset, but at the same time kind of global, and also very opinionated about stuff that's not connected to fashion as well, which to art, which I think is brilliant. When he goes on his rants about smoking and how it's good for his mental health and all of those things. I think it's a characterfulness, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
But I can see why that fits with what you do. So why is it called Merriment?
I'm kind of obsessed with the discovered sort of British plates with slogans and things, and we found one of them a few seasons ago that we had, the "You and I Are Earth" one. It was in the London Museum, and then we found 9 since then. They're quite hard to find actually, and one was "All Merry Men Go Down," which I just thought was really funny, and so we kind of changed it to "All Merry Men Go Down the River," about this sort of this rowing idea.
For this collection you did a shoot which is kind of the models look like they're sort of the artists, but then quite often there are these naked men in the foreground of the image, which so it's quite a sexy shoot. Tell me about the sexiness and also just the shoot itself, why you decided to go down that avenue.
Obviously we have we've experimented with the output of a fashion show the last 3 seasons, and we wanted to transition to this different sales schedule, which is June, and in which case I just didn't feel like it was a show season. And the first season we did outside of, the first season we did with Harry Lambert.
The stylist extraordinaire.
Yeah, we did a lookbook shoot, and it was really lovely, and it was a really great way to like sort of fully encapture this eclectic, sort of at times chaotic universe of what we were doing, in a way that shows you can't often do that, you know, and so it felt really nice to sort of return to that for a season.
Well, you're much more in control as well about how the clothes look in images, aren't you? Because in a show, like, the clothes can move in funny ways and they get captured in funny ways, whereas in a shoot situation, you're kind of
in control and you can do it all yourself, which I love.
Yeah, of course.
But kind of really wanted to explore this idea of, initially it's kind of like this moment of life drawing in like in a dorm room in a school sort of environment, like that's kind of right the initial reference point, but then we found this incredible space that is the home of an art collector, and it just kind of took a different turn. Like, so the thing about lookbooks is you can definitely have in many ways more of a creative output, and I don't really tend to like to do things just, too simple in a way. There's always something going on a little bit extra,
but the sexiness sort of made me think of when you shot everything on sheep shearers, because they were all really sexy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's a really interesting thing about the brand, which is the English heritage but with sexiness.
Of course, and it's a duality that I think we are constantly like playing with, and this idea of this life model, it's kind of an interesting thing, because when you think back to like your first experience as a life model, it's like an interesting, awakening at times, because you're doing it at such a formative period in your life.
What was your first life drawing class like?
My first life drawing class was it was great, with a really fabulous life model that looked amazing.
Attractive.
Yeah, super attractive. And
were you a bit overwhelmed by it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But I was also I was kind of like late to the party. Like I'd missed the first one, I think, and so I think everyone else in the class had their sort of like startle moment.
Yeah.
And so I was the only one panicking, like, oh my god, why is everyone so like fine? But no, it was and I think you're totally right when we think back to like SS22, when we did shoot the collection on real sheep shearers in Cornwall. It's super sexy because it's this different aspect of masculinity in which that the clothes don't necessarily explore from a reference point of view. I don't know, we like to play with those different ideas, and
it's important, isn't it? Because it's
also it is rooted in, we do have this this queer and interesting output, and the way in which we view masculinity is such under fire, and in a way that it's the topic of conversation, isn't it? This sort of idea, and it's maybe just a different way
of communicating that.
Yeah, I think so.
And sort of poking at it. I mean, I remember the season, I think it was the Stately Home season.
Yeah.
The first boy came out in a pair of pants.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. This is like a little bit of a kind of fresh vibe.
Right. Because I think the thing that that I am keen on is that it's not just about this one idea of heritage, and it's not meant to be stuffy, and it's not meant to feel buttoned up all the time, and it's kind of is a sexy thing, I think. And like Brideshead and Morris and Another Country all have undertones of it's totally sexually charged in different points, and so the brand is what I'm trying to do is in these different moments is juggle those two things, and that feels like the subversion, that kind of feels like the reclamation of it all. That kind of is the point.
So when you start out as a designer with all of these amazing references, and you're digging into Freud, and you're looking at different books and plates and all of that stuff, what's the point? And you get to where you boil it in all up, and then it becomes like a rack of clothes or a series of outfits. Like what's the journey?
I don't hold myself too strictly with a set journey. Every single season's been different, to be honest.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people can get confused in the way I work, because for me it's kind of like it's visual links as well as those like narrative links that are in the air. And so if two things don't necessarily look like they should be next to each other, it's kind of the reason why they definitely are going to be next to each other, if you know what I mean. And like it's kind of how does it become a rack of clothes? Some things can be super referential and some things can be quite literal, and then some things are super abstracted from their initial, purpose. But I think we're quite referential, and we don't really start from like complete scratch with anything. It's always about like repurposing ideas or garments that have an archetypal purpose.
And so in this collection, talk to me about a few of the key things that are exciting for you. Like I had a little look and I'm never not excited to see the ducks.
I was chatting with a friend earlier, and the duck is this symbol that appears in everyone's household in some way or another, in everyone's grand's household in England,
Yeah.
Ceramic ducks, plates, etc.
Know it well.
Yeah, they're kind of everywhere. And it's kind of like you can lift up a duck and find like a dozen eggs in someone's house.
Yeah.
It's a ceramic, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of does feel like that. For me, it was just the complete icon of British heritage without feeling too referential to the world of like hunting, which I kind of avoid massively.
Yeah. And what about the dash hounds?
So I live in Angel.
Yeah.
Have you been to Angel recently?
I mean,
yeah, and every street corner you turn, there's 6 dachshunds you're just running around. They're everywhere. Seriously, they're everywhere. And we walk to work every day, and we make the comment every morning. Oh, sometimes me and Leo, we count them as we go to work.
Do you? That's fun.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of felt like a super natural and progression from duck to dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just kind of feels like the brother of that original.
What are the other things in the collection that you love?
I think this season we've had a bit of a narrowed focus on tailoring, and like sharpening that tool, and like it's kind of this season kind of has been about elevation for me, refinement, because we're coming up to our like 3rd year as a thing, and so it feels like I want to have that like documented progression, and I feel like that's evident in the tailoring. It feels different. It feels worked on. And so I'm most proud of that.
I think that's a really important part of a brand development, isn't it? To find certain key parts that you can then refine and kind of move on, but like continue to have the kind of visual motifs. Right,
and we've always like offered tailoring throughout, but we've never really offered like such a range, because it's
also trendy at the minute, isn't it? Like, I mean,
True.
Everybody's talking about. God, I just said the word trendy. Everybody is talking about tailoring.
True, but also I think when we look at the people who wear SS Daley, they do range from the young and the trendy, air quote marks, to like older guys, and like people who would be like at Chelsea Flower. We get pictures sent to us of like guys at Chelsea Flower Show like in full suits, and it's like, oh, we only did one suit that season. That's the suit that like 3 people have been seen wearing. So it's catering for everyone really, but also you can't really talk about like British heritage without like touching on a suit and twisting it and making it something different.
What does it feel like when someone sends you a picture of someone wearing your clothes at Chelsea Flower Show?
Yeah, it's weird, but it's weird in a great way. It's almost I feel a bit more impressed in a way that it's kind of reached not just the London bubble of people, Someone did send me a picture of someone wearing like a duck cardigan in Scotland on a train. I found that really interesting, because when you're in London and you see people wearing stuff in London, you're kind of in that small closed off bubble, but for it to like reach other places is super exciting. Also to see like people in Japan and Korea and the US are wearing stuff of all age ranges is yeah, it was really odd at first. I remember the first time we saw someone was when we got on the Overground in London and saw someone wearing like a knit opposite us, and I was like, we have to move, we have to run down the other side of the train. I don't want them to see me in case they know who we are. Like, we've got to move. I don't know why, I just felt so embarrassed.
I love that you felt embarrassed. It's so
I don't know why. I was like, we just had to get up and run just in case. I know.
That's such a British response.
It totally is, yeah.
Quintessential British reaction. Ah!
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I find that really odd, when people like know.
Yeah. Anna Wintour always comes to the show. I was actually sat kind of back to back with her at the last one. And every time I tried to take a picture, I thought I was going to hit her hair, which I was quite scared about.
This is perfect.
Well, it's so perfect. But what can you tell us about the most powerful woman in fashion?
Interestingly, I find that Anna Wintour holds for me some of those properties and elements that Hockney hold, or Vita hold. They similarly have a uniform that they've sort of curated over time that sort of reflects what they do as an output, and I find Anna to be a super inspiring person, actually.
She's been mega supportive, hasn't she?
Yeah, but yes, she has, and I'm super grateful for that, of course. I think there was maybe one of the biggest pinch me moments of this whole time. It was our first show in the sort of new gen space in the underground of Selfridges. Yeah. And you sort of have no idea what you're doing at that moment. It's your first show, you've no idea what you're doing. Because everyone sort of comes to you and says, what do you want? I'm like, I've not been to a fashion show in my life, so I don't know what the norm is. And we did things very differently. That season we worked with like the National Youth Theatre, and I had no interest in doing like a fashion show, and so we did like a play. It was kind of at the time in which theatres were closed at that point, and runs were being cancelled because someone had COVID, etc. And it kind of felt important to offer up this space in which people are going to be observing for sure. And I know that Anna loves theatre, and that's why I think the wonderful Sarah Moa put Anna in touch with us and sort of brought Anna to our rehearsal. And so we were told the night before, Anna Wintour's going to come to your rehearsal of your first show. And we were like, what? I mean, it was amazing. Obviously we were so excited, but we were like, I don't know what I'm doing. We've never done this before. Is it going to be a mess? Is it going to be great? But she came, and it was amazing because we worked with the incredible Paul Roseby at the NYT to direct and curate this sort of 15-20 minute 3-act drama.
Which you costumed.
Yes, and it was amazing, and that was the biggest pinch me moment of time, I think. And it feels quite exciting to say that she witnessed our first show. It feels kind of momentous.
And the fact she came back means she must have thought it was good.
Yeah, hopefully.
I think she.
Yeah.
I mean, that was such a moment. I remember. I think I wrote on Instagram that this would be one of those shows that everyone remembers because, to you, exactly what you were saying about we're all been really starved of seeing something happening in front of our eyes that was moving, and people interacting and talking to each other in a space that was real as opposed to being on a screen. You're also working on the Vogue extravaganza that's coming to London, which seems to be like a sort of performance or show or something. I haven't quite worked out exactly what it is, but what do you know about the Vogue extravaganza?
I think that
it's going to be in September.
Yes, and something also that I think is super admirable of Anna is that she, I think, is doing the Vogue World thing, and I think that part of it is to aid to stop the closure of theatres in London, which I think is that's kind of the whole reason why I do those things as well, of injecting performance into fashion, because theatre is such a different industry than fashion. Fashion rolls, and you've got something to, it's exchanging product, and it's an industry that you can build on and build on and build on. But theatre's not, and actually it's kind of not, it's not in an upward trajectory, really. And I think that's really sad, especially because theatre for a lot of people of all different classes can be a huge entry point into the arts. And I think seeing the eradication of theatre in education, I think it's super important that fashion, which is a titan of an industry, you know, it's such a huge player, really lends its voice to those other industries that without theatre, I don't think that fashion would be the same, you know, from the beginning. And that's, I think, one of the purposes of Vogue World, which I think is brilliant. And also a huge reason why I feel such respect for...
I mean, also just by the fact of bringing some attention to London in a time which has kind of been kind of difficult with Brexit and everything that's happened. Let's talk about a topic which I was, before I came to meet you, worried would take over the entire podcast. The obsession with Kate Bush, and how you first discovered her and what the obsession is about.
I first discovered her, I think a family member was playing her, and I know exactly which song I first heard, and it was moving into the saxophone song, because it kind of starts with like the whale sounds. I was like, what the hell is this? I've never heard a whale sound. I was like super young. I think I was like 8, and I was like, what on earth is this on the radio? Like, why are we playing this? And I don't know, I became completely obsessed at that moment. Also, I don't think Kate is heralded enough, really, as like the pioneer of music and art and visual and video and fashion and theatre. I mean, also Kate has this amazing thing. I'm saying Kate as if I know her.
I mean, pretend you do for the purposes of the podcast.
I just kind of I think you can see a lot of similarities in the way in which I've formatted my output into how she has. Like, you know, she came back after so many years and she did a super closed off private like run of theatre shows. And I found that to be just so exciting, you know.
They were really, really performative as well.
I didn't actually go because
I cried.
Did you?
I think 3 times. I mean, the second act when they play the Ninth Wave, which in its entirety, which we'll come on to talk about in a minute, because obviously the Autumn Winter collection, which is about to come into the stores soon, was based on that for you, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it was like insane. It was like watching a movie. Like there was this helicopter sound that came out of the sky, and then she's on the boat, and I mean, it was nuts. It was so crazy.
Yeah, but that's why I love her so much, because she's always had this integrity for her own thoughts and vision, and I just adore that so much.
She's another one of those people who is completely singular in her output, in the way in which she's approached her output, and she's got this kind of incredible way of, like, as you said, like blending all these things that are cultural into, like, the red shoes and all of those different things, that books. I mean, there's a literary theme in a lot of what she does. But the Ninth Wave particularly, which, if people don't know, is like the second half of Hounds of Love, and it's this designed to be this one suite of music. Why was that for you, like, such a kind of start point for Autumn Winter 2023?
Myself and my partner Leo are both obsessed with Kate Bush. Independently, we came together because of Kate Bush, I think. And
I love that story.
And the Hounds of Love is his thing. That's his favourite album. Hounds of Love and Dreaming are his, and kind of I'm more The Kick Inside, The Red Shoes, Never Forever. That's me. So we're kind of separate in those. And he did own, in our sort of ownership division of the albums, he owned that one. And I was talking to my family about just new, like, sort of family, like, like new things that had come into the family in recent possession because of a bereavement that we had discovered, and about my, like, grandparents, like their parents and their lives. And we had, like, a box full of my great granddad's notebooks and pictures and, like, trinkets and bits and bobs from his time. My granddad, he was in the Merchant Navy, and there's just so much about his life that my grandmother wasn't privy to until she had these things fall into her lap. And so we together had sort of, like, peeled back a different, layer of our family history and the connotations of that, and at the same moment, Leo and I were talking, and this part of the album obviously speaks so much to like being sort of like lost at sea and this whole idea, and the two just sort of went together really well for me. And it's a season in which there wasn't so many visuals. Actually, it was kind of more about this floating idea in the air. And so when people were like, "What does it look like this season?" I'd be like, "Well, it sounds like this." Yeah. And people were like, "What?" So yeah, it was that's what I mean. It's a different approach to every season. And
yeah. Which keeps people on their toes and also keeps your brain engaged in creating clothes and being excited by doing that.
That's it. It's staying excited, I think.
And it started this show. I mean, basically, you arrived and it was kind of like there was these big screens of waves and
right.
There was a kind of Kate Bush feeling in the air. But then it started
yes.
with, I don't know how anyone would have predicted the beginning of this show, which was suddenly, so Ian McKellen came out in this like incredible sort of naval-inspired outfit and started reading Tennyson.
Right.
How did that happen?
So, of course, Tennyson inspired Kate to... The Ninth Wave is Tennyson. And I sort of did a deep dive into the Ninth Wave prior. And... I had this incredible sort of surreal moment where I'd connected with Ian McKellen, and this idea for the show just came about so naturally in conversation. Like, he was asking me what we're focusing, what I'm doing this season, what are the ideas, because I think he knew that it's always quite narrative led, and he is also an ambassador of the NYT, so it's kind of very circular, and. Yeah, I was telling him about the Ninth Wave and the whole Kate Bush inspiration, and he and Kate are, friendly. I didn't pry too much into that.
Getting ever closer to Kate, Stephen.
Exactly,
like you're like
thread away now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it all felt very comfortable for him as well. And I sent him the initial extract of Tennyson, which is like 15 pages long, and we were like, we're gonna have to cut this down considerably. And I think we'd cut it down like 8 times before we got it to like a length that was like suitable. Also, so Ian is on tour at this point with Mother Goose. He's across the country. He was in Newcastle, I think, and he got the train that morning. He'd finished and he'd packed up and left this, I think, Newcastle. He was on tour the day before.
Yeah.
At like 2 a.m. Came to London for us, and he arrived quite amazingly on the back of a motorbike to the show.
You are kidding.
Seriously. Because I got a text like, "Oh, sorry, he's going to be outside in like 5 minutes." And I thought, obviously, it's going to be an Uber or, Nelson Lee or something. And he's on the back of a motorbike. And I just thought, how can this man get any more, incredible and amazing and impressive, and how can I adore him anymore? And yeah.
Gandalf on the back of a motorbike.
Wow. I think there was a group of tourists that walked past at the moment in which he took his helmet off, and they were like, "Whoa!" It was
oh my
brilliant.
God, that is what you call a fashion moment.
It was, yeah. I was like, "Oh, hi." He was like, "Hello."
Hi, Ian. You mentioned briefly at the beginning of the chat a little bit about Harry Lambert, who works with you and starts the show and has been a champion of yours from the beginning and works with some very interesting people. I wanted you to talk a little bit about the Harrys, because obviously Harry Styles has worn your trademark big trouser, which if anyone doesn't know, is a very wide cut leg trouser, and he wore it in the Golden video.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about both Harrys, and then I want to know who would win in a dress up competition.
Oh, that's a good one. Harry Lambert has been one of the most supportive people, such an uber talented, crazy busy person who always finds time to listen and talk and help, help build SS Daley, in which he's been so crucial to. And we, met in a very modern way, in which a friend sent me his Instagram story. He was looking for like younger designers to help with a shoot, I think, and I sent him some of my grad stuff. I was like just about a month out of uni at this point, sat at home like twiddling my thumbs in Liverpool, and he loved it, but he said it wasn't right for this project, and so he was like, can you bring it next week for a different project? And I was like, okay, great. He's like, you are London based, right? And I was like, yeah, of course.
Whilst in Liverpool.
Like frantically hand hemming everything to perfection. And so we sort of like came down, dropped it all off, and he was sort of like very casually in that moment, oh yeah, this is a project for Harry. And I was like, oh, I thought you were Harry. He's like, oh no, Harry Styles. I was like, oh fuck, of course, like this is crazy. And yeah, and then it became that Harry wore the collection for the Golden Video, which kind of just like boosted everything.
It must have been such a surreal moment.
Yeah, it was, and I feel like everything sort of changed from there. Things were like going anyway, and we were selling stuff, and you were making stuff, and we were doing our thing. But then
it never helps. It never not helps to have your clothes on someone in the public eye. I mean, it's
of course
how it works.
But also, it was just felt like such a
good fit.
A good fit. It was like such an easy marriage,
And they're both called Harry, which is also quite brilliant.
Yeah.
So who would win in the dress-off?
Oh God. Who would win in a dress-off? What's the vibe of the dress-off? What's the goal? Where are we? What club are we in?
Well, they're going out somewhere really fabulous. Like,
where are they going? I need to know.
They're in Miami.
Oh, right. Maybe Harry Lambert would win that one.
Okay, interesting.
I think he would. Maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, both. We love both Harrys.
It's very nice that relationship sort of continues as well, doesn't it? Like,
yeah.
You're working with them, and so kind of. Are you designing anything for Harry at the minute? Or you can't say. That face was like, I can't tell you that.
Well, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm a bit of a doctor. What is it? Like patient-client?
Yeah.
Patient-doctor privilege.
Oh, yes. Okay, so what do your parents make of the fashion business? What do they think of it all?
Well, it's quite interesting. The fashion business is... it's quite crazy. It's quite insane. It's ludicrous, really. I come from a family of... bricklayers, contractors. My gran worked in a sewing factory for a period of time when she was younger, so she had 3% of an understanding of what it is. I think at first it was like they were like, "Woo, this is great! Amazing! You're doing it. You've gone and studied for the thing you want to do, and you're actually doing it. I mean, that's super successful in today's day and age. It's quite rare to do that now. So I feel very privileged. As a side note. But now I think it's gone. Now they're like, Jesus, do you get a break? And they're like, is this real? I spent Christmas Day in the studio this year, and on that moment, it was like 4 p.m. on Christmas Day, and I was like, I can't do this again. I'm gonna.
Yeah, you can't.
No, but it takes that sort of devotion, dedication to get it moving. Outside of the fashion industry, starting a business without sort of external help is challenging. B, in this climate, even more challenging. C, in fashion in this climate is crazy. It's really difficult, and I think that people shy away often from that. It's carnage and it's crazy, and you sort of have to really throw your entire life into it. It has been my entire life for the last 2.5 years, and finally I think we're starting to see this corner that we're turning, that it feels like, I can actually step away for 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day,
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you. Very fun.
It's very nice to chat.
Yeah.
Going off now to try on some duck jumpers.
Yeah.
You've been listening to In Talks with me, Danielle Radoichin. The sound and theme music is by Waugh Productions, and the artwork is by Patrick Waugh. If you enjoyed this episode, please pass it on to someone who you think might also like it. Please subscribe and leave a review. To pitch for guest ideas, you can DM me via my socials at Danielle Radoichin. Thanks for listening.